Would you like to make your flying more meaningful by helping others? Well, then you'll want to hear our conversation today with Ken Wayne, founder of Flying Tales, about the organization's incredible airborne rescues of cats, dogs, bear cubs, bald eagles, coyotes, bobcats, and just about every other kind of wild animal. Ken's a former TV news anchor, and he talks about the satisfaction of flying animals in need and about their new TV series on PBS called Flying Tales. So stick around to hear about these unique and sometimes emotional rescue flights. Hello again, and welcome to Aviation News Talk, where we talk general aviation. My name is Max Trescott. I've been flying for 50 years. I'm the author of several books and the 2008 National Flight Instructor of the Year. And my mission is to help you become the safest possible pilot. Last week in episode 405, we talked to a safety expert, Dr. Todd Conklin, who spent 25 years working at Los Alamos National Laboratory, about why safety isn't something you have, it's something you do. And that show generated more emails from you than any show in recent memory. So if you didn't hear that episode, please check it out at aviationnewstalk.com/405. And if you're new to this show, welcome. I'm glad you found us. Now, if you would, in whatever app that you're using, touch the subscribe key, or in Spotify or the Apple Podcast app, the follow key, so that next week's episode is downloaded for free. And Cyber Monday has just passed, but there's still time to treat yourself to something special. A new headset from Lightspeed. The Delta Zulu headset is the only headset I know of with a built-in frequency equalizer that you can tune to your unique hearing so that you can hear ATC just a little better. And it has a built-in CO monitor to help keep you safe from carbon monoxide. And best of all, Lightspeed is giving a $100 discount whenever you buy a new Delta Zulu between now and January 12th. Now, dozens of Aviation News Talk listeners took advantage of a similar deal last year when they did a Christmas special on the Zulu 3 headset. That same deal is available again, but this time it's on their top-of-the-line Delta Zulu headset. And of course, whenever you buy a Lightspeed, they will send a check to support Aviation News Talk, but only if you first go to this special link we've set up for you to get to their website. So to get that $100 off the list price, start by going to aviationnewstalk.com/lightspeed. And if you'd like to support this show, now would be a great time to do it, as it's the first of the month, and we always lose some supporters every month when people's credit cards expire and they don't go in and update it. So we're always looking for new supporters to replace the ones we lose each month. So if you've enjoyed listening to this show in the past, I would greatly appreciate your support. If you would sign up now to support the show by going to aviationnewstalk.com/support. And when you do, I'll read your name on a future show. And my thanks to the one person who signed up this week. That was Richard Idy. He's a mega supporter. Those are the folks that sign up to support the show at $50 a month. His credit card expired about 6 months ago, and he just came back and fixed it and updated it. So, Richard, thank you very much. By the way, he's a physician and a military flight surgeon, as well as a private pilot. And if you've supported the show in the past via Patreon, take a moment to sign in and just verify that your credit card hasn't expired. People are often surprised to find that they think they're supporting the show, but they no longer are. Now let me tell you about our video of the week. It's episode number 1 of the new Flying Tales series that debuted on a PBS station in Sacramento this past week. I watched the show and enjoyed it, and I'm sure you will too. It involves lots of GA flying to transport all kinds of animals in need. And in that TV show, you'll see some of the animals that we'll be talking with Ken about today. At the bottom of the page, you'll find links to all of our videos of the week. And at the top, there are links where you can sign up to support the show in 4 different ways. So just go out to aviationnewstalk.com/video. And of course, there will be a link to that in our show notes. And let me mention that today, Tuesday, December 2nd, is Giving Tuesday. Its purpose is to encourage volunteering and donations to support nonprofits and community causes. So after you hear today's show, please consider helping out the Flying Tales organization. In addition to cash donations, they'll also consider donations of airplanes. And of course, they're always looking for volunteer pilots. And by the way, please share this episode with all of your pilot friends. Doing that is really easy. Just look for the share button in whatever app that you're using to listen to the show, and then send this episode to your friends so that they can enjoy it as well. Now let me tell you a little about Ken Wayne. Ken and I exchanged a few emails about 10 years ago, but this was the first time we ever talked, and I greatly enjoyed our conversation. Ken is well known to television viewers in Northern California. He worked at stations in Fresno, LA, and Sacramento before coming to the San Francisco TV market. He spent 25 years at KTVU Channel 2, where he worked first as a reporter and then as a news anchor. And then later he spent 6 years as a news anchor at KRON TV Channel 4. And a year ago, he left the TV news business to concentrate on starting Flying Tales. And now here's our conversation with Ken Wayne. Ken, welcome to the show. Great to have you here today.
Thank you, Max. Glad to be here.
Well, you have a lot of great fun animal stories to talk about, and we'll get to those in just a minute. Now, a lot of people know about your background in television news, but I bet most of them don't know about a rather interesting job that you had in the Navy. So tell us about that, and also tell us, how did you get that job?
Well, I enlisted in the Navy when I was 18. I had already applied to Annapolis to go to the Naval Academy, but it's such a long process, and I got tired of waiting. So I enlisted, but I only enlisted if I could get the journalism program in the Navy, because I was on the school newspaper in high school. I really enjoyed writing. And so the Navy put me through what's called the Defense Information School at Fort Benjamin Harrison, Indiana, outside of Indianapolis. And while I was there, the Navy said, we're going to keep you after you finish the print side and the photojournalism side and put you into our broadcasting school, which was new to me. I didn't even know it existed. And I thought, oh, that sounds fun. So then they trained me how to be a radio DJ, how to put together a radio show, studio production for television, how to run cameras, direct, produce, and be on camera. And so while I was going through that school, which I loved and found my calling, right, the Navy said, oh, you've been accepted to Annapolis, so you can quit and go to the academy. And I said, can I do this after I get out of Annapolis? They said, well, you might be a station manager or something. I said, yeah, but can I report? Can I be a broadcaster? They go, oh, no. Only enlisted people do that. The officers run the thing. You know, the enlisted people do the work. And I said, I think I want to stay enlisted and do this because I really, really enjoyed it. So that's what happened. So I went to Adak, Alaska and the Aleutian Islands for a year, worked at a TV station, radio station up there, got put on a ship, the USS Biddle, a guided missile cruiser in Norfolk, Virginia, did a couple Mediterranean deployments and down in the Caribbean, all kinds of crazy stuff. This is from 1979 to the early 80s. And then my last assignment was at Subic Bay in the Philippines, the Far East Network. I had an afternoon radio show. I shot TV stories during the day that aired on the Far East Network at Clark Air Base and Subic Bay Naval Station, the two biggest military bases outside of the United States. So that was really great. I loved it. The Navy asked me to stay an extra year beyond my enlistment. I stayed another year. They asked me to stay another year. And I said, you know what? I'm starting to speak Tagalog. I think I got to go home. I'm turning Filipino. I'm having too much fun. But while I was there at QB Point Naval Air Station, they had a flying club. And so I started taking lessons, and it was really cheap. I mean, keep in mind, I was making maybe $300 a week as a E5 in the Navy. So I started taking lessons and I soloed. But by the time I got to a point to build up enough hours to get my pilot's license, I was ready to be discharged. So I got out of the service and dropped the flying and focused on my broadcasting career, which finally led me back to the Bay Area, home. And then my neighbor at one point was a 777 captain for United who had a Cessna 182, and we'd go flying around. And I made the mistake of saying I had taken lessons, and then he just got right on me. He's like, well, you're going to finish. And he got me to finish, which was the best thing that happened. And I ended up buying a 182 as well because I had learned from all his mistakes and all the planes that he had. And he said, you know, basically in California, if you're just wanting to fly around and take your friends someplace, your wife, and bring some stuff, and you don't have to worry so much about weight and balance, and you can go just fast enough, not real fast, but carry more than enough. 182 is kind of a perfect traveling plane. So, and it's affordable, plenty of parts. Everybody knows how to work on them. That's the long story of how I got into flying and how the Navy helped me out. And by the way, in the Navy, I had a lot of great flying adventures, not being a naval aviator. I mean, when I was on the ship, they would helicopter me off the ship to go over to the aircraft carriers in our battle groups in the Mediterranean. And I was kind of like I guess I was a gopher. I was running over there getting stuff for our ship, coordinating some things between the vessels. So I'd be standing on the flight deck of our guided missile cruiser in the middle of the Med, and the helicopter would just hover and drop a line down, and you get into this thing and put it under your armpits. And there's a guy standing there with a long metal line, pipe kind of thing, and a wand, and he's standing on the deck and he touches you while the rotors are spinning above. And I'm like, why are you doing that? And he goes, so you don't get electrocuted. I'm grounding you. And I was like, okay, this is serious stuff, you know? I got to be on the flight decks of numerous aircraft carriers and watch the flight operations, the launches and the catches. And finally, at one point, they flew me out to the USS Midway while it was still on active duty in 1985 for the 40th anniversary of the commissioning of that aircraft carrier. So I flew out from QB Point and got to do a carrier landing in a COD, cargo onboard delivery, I believe is what COD stands for, and catch the wire and got my official tailhook certification from the skipper of the Midway. So spent a lot of time in helicopters and various other naval aircraft while I was in the Navy. So I got a real appreciation of aviation from the military service.
That's amazing. So you got probably some of the best on-the-job training you could possibly get when you were in the Navy for your subsequent career. Plus, you had this really broad exposure to aviation. At what point did you finally finish your pilot certificate? How many years ago was that, or how old were you?
1999. I was 39 years old. 1999, and I had taken my first flight. I was probably 23, maybe something like that. So it was about 16 years later. Yeah, I got my license in 99 and I bought my 182 in 2003. So,
yeah. And I think that's a common story that a lot of people will start flying young and life gets in the way and then they're not able to finish for decades later. So that's not too much of a surprise. And I like your comments about the 182. I've always said that that's kind of the best all-around airplane if you're trying to optimize on cost, weight and balance, low cost of maintenance, climb capability. I mean, it really is kind of the universal Swiss Army knife, I think.
Yeah. And you get into you can land on a dirt airstrip. You can get into places a lot of other planes can't get in and out of. You got the high wings. I've flown it up to some fun. There's a place called Gravelly. It's on Lake Pillsbury, just north of Clear Lake. I don't know if you're familiar with that area, but you can land on the dirt runway and you can see the elk swimming in the lake in the summertime, and you come in to land, and not a lot of planes can do that, unless you're flying a kit plane or, some backcountry kind of plane. So, yeah, it's a blast.
Yeah, indeed. Well, you've been having way too much fun is all I can say. But let's talk about the intersection between your news journalism and flying animals. How did this all come about?
Well, I first found out about flying animals through Pilots and Paws. I think everybody knows about them. Most pilots see them. And I had done a few trips with them, just part-time. And at this point, I was working at KTVU, and I approached them about, hey, I could do these little stories about flying animals and stuff. And they were like, okay, yeah, well, let's see how it goes. And it just dragged on and on and on. And then the opportunity at KRON 4 popped up, and I got hired there. And I made it as part of my contract. I said, look, I want to pursue doing these animal trips and maybe do some video stories on them. And if I run them on Channel 4, I want to make sure that I'm the owner and creator of this, because there's a thing in the business where whatever you do for that station belongs to the station. And I said, you can have anything I produce, but it also belongs to me, and I can do what I want with it. So they agreed to that. And the first story I did, I was sitting at my computer at work, and I saw Pilots and Paws trip pop up. 2 bear cubs need a ride. And I didn't even read it. I opened it, saw the phone number, and called. I mean, I was on the phone probably within 30 seconds of that email posting, and said, I want to do this trip. And they set it up. It was from South Lake Tahoe to Ramona in San Diego County. And the thing was, the trip was the day before me and my wife were scheduled to fly to Europe for a long awaited vacation that had been planned for months. And now I'm kind of messing everything up. I tried to squeeze this trip in February in winter. So we flew up to Tahoe the day before, because it's going to be, 3.5-hour flight to Ramona from there, and had to take the back seat out of the plane so that we could fit the crate in. And it's a big, heavy-duty, 100-pound solid steel crate. And both these bears are about 30 pounds each. So it's like almost 200 pounds of weight in the back. And then me and my wife in the front. And we picked it up first thing in the morning in South Lake Tahoe. There's snow on the ground, but it was clear skies. Flew to Ramona, took all the seats out of the plane to get the crate back out, dropped off the bears. And then they gave us another bear that we put back in the crate, and flew back to South Lake Tahoe, because they had left one bear cub behind and they didn't want him to be lonely. So we did about 9 hours of flying that day, got back to Petaluma that night. And the next morning, bright and early, we're on a plane to Paris, just completely fried, but emotionally filled to the brim of what we had just done. And the story ran, and it got a lot of good feedback. And the station loved it. And the U.S. Humane Society gave me an award that I didn't even know existed. And it just was the perfect start to what we were doing. We were flying over Yosemite Valley, these stunning views, two bear cubs in the back, and we're looking at each other. Me and my wife are going, is this really happening? We're flying bears over Yosemite National Park. I would have never dreamed I'd be doing anything like that when I got my pilot's license. It was thrilling. It was absolutely thrilling.
Well, I guess those aren't the only bears that you've flown. Tell us about some other bear stories, because I think that's really interesting. You don't think of bears in small airplanes. That's pretty rare.
Yeah, it's been actually, I've flown 7 bear cubs this past summer. A couple of them were rather famous. One was the one, it was down in Ramona. It had been found in the mountains above Ojai in Ventura County, all alone, really, really small. So small it had to be bottle fed. And some hikers or campers saw it. It was obviously way too little and all by itself. So Fish and Wildlife came. They set up trail cameras to see if they could find the mother. And the mother never showed up. So they took it to Ramona where it was bottle fed. The twist on this whole story is that the caregivers dressed up as bears because they wanted the bear to remain a wild bear. And then they put on mink coats and bear masks, and they went in and bottle fed it, and they wrestled with it like it was, the mom playing with the bear. And it was there for a couple months. And then we took it up to Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue, where they have this beautiful, big, probably the best and biggest bear enclosure in California for wild bears. They have a waterfall with a pond that they put fish in, teach the bears how to fish. They hide food, makes the bears, search for their food as they would in the wild. So this is an enclosure, and plus they're walled off from people, so they don't get exposed to people. The whole idea is to keep them wild, have zero interaction with people, so that when they go into the wild, they want bears to be fearful of humans. They'll haze them if they get too comfortable around people. Because a bear that is used to people out in the wild, if you see a bear start to approach you, what are you going to do? You're going to probably have some concern, right? So they don't want bears approaching people. They want bears going away from people. That's the whole point. Anyway, we took that bear up there, and it lived with a couple other bear cubs its age and learned how to be a bear and hung out and scrounged for food and wrestled with other bear cubs. And then I was able to, it was the first time I was able to actually get a bear, bring it to a rescue facility, and then go back and get it released. So we flew that bear back to Camarillo Airport, which is pretty much the closest airport to Ojai, which doesn't have an airport. And then Fish and Wildlife picked up the bear from there and drove it up into the mountains where it was found and set it free. And that was just about a month ago. So that bear's back where it was found, and it's got a collar on it. They can track it. It's got a tag. And as far as I know, the bear's doing just fine, back where it belongs. And then the other bear was a bear that was found with no fur on it. It was a naked bear, and it was wandering in the El Dorado National Forest. And that bear was taken to the Gold Country Wildlife Rescue in Auburn, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. They gave it antibiotics. Eventually, the fur started to grow back. It gained a lot of weight, but the undergrowth of the fur wasn't there, and they didn't think it would be able to survive a winter in the Sierra without that undercoat. So that decision was made that that bear couldn't be returned to the wild. So me and a pilot friend, Chris Tout, who has access to a Kodiak, much larger plane than a 182, we put that bear in. We had to use the 182 because the crate was bigger and the bear was bigger. And so we flew it to Eureka, to the Sequoia Park Zoo, and that's where that bear is today. That bear was moved up there about 4 or 5 months ago and is doing great. And it has another bear to hang out with. That's another important thing. You don't want to have these animals alone. I mean, it's not healthy mentally for these animals to do that. So yeah, 2 great bear cub stories, and they just keep on coming. We're getting more and more bear flights, and we're really happy that California Fish and Wildlife trusts us to basically be their go-to nonprofit to move not only the bears, but all the other wild animals that we move for Fish and Wildlife. It's really an honor to do it.
I saw a picture of the people dressed up as bears feeding the bears, and
right,
fairly realistic looking. So I thought that was pretty impressive. And obviously the organizations are doing a lot more than just kind of the physical care of the animals, trying to figure out how to get them back into the wild if that's at all possible.
Right.
Now, a lot of organizations, such as you mentioned, Pilot and Paws, focus more on cats and dogs. You do that as well. Tell us some cats and dog stories. For example, I understand that you were down in Fresno in April and you literally saved the lives of some animals.
21, I think we had 21 dogs and cats. Well, there were 14 puppies found in a garbage bag alive. And those were pulled out, and all of those puppies were saved. There were 2 kittens that were in a tent in a homeless encampment. A woman had left a candle burning in the tent. The tent caught fire, and the kittens got burned. Unfortunately, one of them did not survive, but the other one did, and was adopted by the veterinary technician who took care of it. She had another cat named Motley, and so this kitten was named Crew. And so they're little buddies now. We get a lot of trips like that because there are the shelters in the Central Valley. If you go from basically Modesto down to Bakersfield, they're overcrowded. Spay and neutering is not a big thing in the Central Valley. There are a lot of different people trying to address that issue, but the shelters just get overrun. I talk to animal professionals, and they say, you don't blame the shelters for putting down animals. They have no choice. There's nowhere to put them. So we go down there and get them out of there. And we bring them up to the Bay Area and other parts of California where they can be adopted out. And there are rooms, there's space for these animals that otherwise would be put down. And we've gone down plenty of days where we were literally hours away from the animals being put down. And these people in Fresno who care about the animals get them out of those shelters and give them to us. And we've flown 21. One time we flew 23 cats. It was just cats, 23 cats that we flew to Napa to be adopted out. So it's sad that our animal situation is like that. And that's part of the reason I want to do these stories, is to highlight the things that we can do as a society, maybe to address some of these problems that we have. There's no reason a healthy animal should be put down. It's very infuriating, to say the least, if you're an animal lover, to see a good animal be put to death because there's no room for it when somebody could take that animal in. And then, don't get me started on the whole profiteering of the puppy mills and all of that kind of stuff. I mean, I will never buy a dog the rest of my life, or any animal, because there are so many out there, great animals that often turn out to be much better than some kind of a purebred fancy dog, because they're not purebred, because they have a healthier gene stock, if you will. I'm not a biologist, but I know that the animals I've adopted have, my last little dog lived to be 14. We have a 19-year-old cat right now. I mean, he's hanging on, but, he's a guy that nobody wanted. And, you see these glossy pictures of these beautiful purebred pups on these websites. And then you go to where they're actually bred, and you see these deplorable, awful conditions with dogs chained and left outside in the cold, and they're just making puppies. And it's awful. So those are things that could be changed. You just got to draw attention to it. And I think there are enough animal lovers out there that could make these changes. And so it's a slow, work in progress. An old Navy term, turning a battleship, right? Doesn't happen real fast.
Yeah. And I was kind of surprised to learn that each year in the U.S., more than 1 million animals, pets, cats, dogs are euthanized. I mean, those numbers are just staggering, and it's just heartrending to even think about. As you said, for lack of space,
right,
these animals are put down. And I have learned in the past that in general, the animals move, at least here in California, from south to north. There just seemed to be an overabundance of animals that are in shelters in the south, and so pulling them up to the north makes the most sense. So great work that you're doing in that area. Now, I'm kind of intrigued to see that you're not doing just cats and dogs, but you're doing a broad range of wildlife. Most other organizations don't have the breadth of wildlife that you do. How is it that you got involved with doing wildlife in addition to cats and dogs?
Well, I can thank or blame Doris Duncan, who is the executive director of Sonoma County Wildlife. She had approached me, and I had flown several wild animals for her, including some raptors, owls, and hawks. And then we did a bald eagle, which was a whole separate thrilling adventure. But at one point, she asked me to fly a peregrine falcon down to Carlsbad. It had been found at a reservoir near the Carlsbad airport with an injured wing. It was taken to her, and they were actually able to heal it to where it could fly and be released. At this point, I had been at the TV station I was at for probably 5 or 6 years, and I wasn't getting reimbursed for my time and effort, and certainly not my fuel and all that stuff, which that's a whole different issue. as you know. But I said, look, I said, it's going to probably be about $700 in fuel round trip for me to take this Falcon down. I said, let me talk to the station, see if we can work something out. And she goes, no, let me just put something on Facebook. I can get $700 in a few hours. And I go, I don't know. I feel weird about that. I don't want to ask for money. I just hate that idea of asking anybody for money. Unless I work for the company, then I'll ask for money, right? And she said something that kind of stuck with me. She goes, Ken, people want to help. Let them help. And I was like, all right, I'll make up the difference. And so she called me a few hours later that day, and she goes, well, we didn't get $700. I said, that's fine. I'll make up the difference. She goes, we got $7,000. It's actually $6,800. And I was like, what? And she goes, I'm telling you, people want to help. So she said, I'm going to set that aside, and we're going to use that to keep you going with our animals that if you need help for these kinds of things. So bottom line is she got me into she said, you need to start a nonprofit. You really need to get this thing on a more official footing and get going instead of doing it kind of by the seat of your pants. And so she's the one who got me into the wild animal world, and she developed this strong connection now I have with Fish and Wildlife. And I have flown almost every wild animal that you can think of in California. There's two I haven't flown yet, and the mountain lion is next. I know there's a mountain lion kitten or cub, I'm going to get the terminology correct, that is going to need to be released soon. And then there's a condor. And I actually was asked to fly a condor from Portland to the LA Zoo, but it was last winter. The weather wasn't good. Plus, they wanted a human handler with the bird. And I was like, a bird with a 9-foot wingspan and a person in the back seat of a 182 in the dead of winter from Portland to LA. That's not going to be a good flight for the condor. So I took a pass on that. But now we have this new twin engine that was donated to us. So that's a good bird for a condor. So the next time a condor pops up, we'll be able to do it.
Yeah. Now, I saw some of the cutest pictures of coyote pups. Now, I'm sure some people are going to wonder, why would you bother transporting coyotes? Tell us about the coyote pups in that story.
Well, there's been a lot of coyote pups we've flown, and I know people have mixed feelings about coyotes. Oh, they're eating my cats and dogs and all that kind of stuff. And that's a different issue we can talk about. But one in particular that struck me is we flew down to Santa Monica Airport and picked up 7 really tiny little baby coyotes. And the mother was gone. And what had happened, I was told, was that somebody was doing construction or remodeling at their house in the hills of West LA near Malibu. And unbeknownst to the contractors, they had disturbed a coyote den that was near the deck that was being worked on and probably frightened away the mother. Now, the contractors or the homeowners maybe thought they were doing a good thing by taking these pups and bringing them into a wildlife center. But what they should have done, I'm told, is to back off and wait for the mother to return and then try to maybe get them all together to move them, or wait a little while until they're big enough to leave, which would probably be a few weeks. So in any event, the mother never returned, of course. The pups are gone. So she probably wondered what happened to her pups. And I took all of those pups up to Sonoma County Wildlife. And then when they get big enough to be released, they try to keep them as far away from people as possible so there are no conflicts. And, coyotes play a big part in the environment. They take care of rodents. They're opportunists like bears. They'll eat almost anything that's nearby. So a lot of it is our fault. We have food, we have garbage out there. Even in San Francisco now, on city streets, you'll see coyotes. I've seen coyotes on the Embarcadero in San Francisco. It just blows my mind. But yeah, every place is turning into wildlife habitat. So we got to keep our garbage off the streets, and then the coyotes will go somewhere else to look for food.
Yeah, good advice on trying to allow that reunification of mother and pups to occur rather than just kind of scooping up the pups.
Yeah.
Now, you did a rescue in LA after some of the major fires there. Talk about that.
Yeah, the Palisades fire. We got a call from Pets Lifeline, which is the animal shelter in Sonoma. We worked with Marin Humane Society and the Nevada Humane Society out of Reno, and coordinated with LA Animal Services, which is the animal agency in the city of Los Angeles. And what they wanted to do was open up some space at the LA shelters for the families who had lost their homes, didn't have a place to stay, didn't have a place to keep their animals. And so that freed up space for those people to put their animals there temporarily until they got their footing on where they were going to live a little bit longer, where they could be with their pets again. So it was just a temporary solution to a longer term problem. So we took about a dozen large breed dogs, huskies, shepherds, 100-pound plus dogs. And we had 5 single engine planes fly down there, loaded up as many dogs as we could. But with the crates, even with the back seats out, you can only fit maybe 2 crates, even in a 182 for big dogs. So it was frustrating because we couldn't get as many dogs out as we had hoped. We got a dozen out, but we probably could have got twice that many if we had a larger airplane. I mean, what I would really like to get is a Caravan. I think the Cessna Caravan, the little feeder for FedEx, that plane would be perfect because we could have carried, maybe 50 large breed dogs out of there in one plane, and much more efficient. So we're working on that. But in the meantime, we did get a twin engine Cessna 421 donated to us. It's going through its annual right now, so we haven't flown it yet, but that'll be a huge help to be able to go into these larger, more critical kind of mass evacuation or emergency scenes, wildfires, floods, even hurricanes outside of California, where we can get in there and move larger numbers of animals out a lot faster and get farther quicker with these animals to get them to a safe place. But you do what you can, right?
Well, and you're doing great things. Tell us about the first official flight after you started the organization. You mentioned the bald eagle before.
Yeah.
Talk about that. That's quite a story.
Yeah, they asked me, it was Doris at Sonoma County Wildlife, can you fly this bald eagle up to Lake Almanor? And I was thrilled. I said, absolutely. So it was in a big dog kennel, and they put burlap around, you have that wire mesh in these plastic kennels. Well, they don't want the feathers to break, but sometimes if the bird's moving around, the feathers will break if it gets caught in those little wire meshes. So they put burlap on it, protect it. So we never actually saw the bird the entire time. We put it in the back seat, me and my wife, and I said, what do I do? And she goes, just take it up there, and if it can see the water, it'll know what to do. It'll be home. And I don't know if you've flown up to Chester, but the airport up there, Rogers Field, is right next to Lake Almanor. So, we landed and taxied off to the side, and set up my little cameras and put the crate out and opened the door and stood back, and nothing happened. I think the eagle was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not going out there. And finally, I kind of tilted it up a little bit, and it hopped out and flew away. And it was absolutely exhilarating to for the first time see this bald eagle and how big it was, and just, how majestic they look. And it was just the most gratifying. I still get chills when I think about that eagle just soaring away toward the pine trees at the edge of the lake. And that's a good day. That's one of the few times where I felt like I could pat myself on the back and say, wow, that was really cool. That was amazing and just so gratifying.
What an amazing experience. I mean, how many people get to release a bald eagle to the wild?
Right. And I had to have the papers from the U.S. It's a federal thing when you're handling a bald eagle. So I had to have proper documents and all that stuff. So it's not like you can just go down the street and, hey, volunteer to fly an eagle. There's a process. So I felt like we were kind of getting there. We were kind of stepping up our game to the point where we're entrusted to do something like that. It was really important to me and for our organization.
Well, you're stepping up your game in a lot of different ways. This was an exciting week for you because you just had the premiere of the new Flying Tales TV show, which I watched last night. I absolutely loved it. How did you get a PBS station interested in carrying this first episode, and what are your hopes and plans for the show?
Well, when I decided I was going to pursue this nonprofit work full time and left KRON 4, which was a hard decision. I mean, my whole career, all I wanted to do was come back to the home and be a main evening anchor in San Francisco at a TV station. I was like, I never thought I'd get that. I mean, that was a huge, huge goal. Got that. And then to walk away from that to try to pursue this. So I posted on LinkedIn. I said, hey, I'm leaving, but I still want to pursue the stories that I've been telling about these animal flights. And if there's any broadcast partners that are interested, let me know. PBS hit me right away and said, we would like to do a 13-part series. I was like, fantastic. So we had to shoot one, which we finally completed. It took about 6 months, and got it done and turned it over to PBS, and the Sacramento PBS station aired it Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving. And now it's on the PBS app, which is free. So if you go on the PBS app and just type in Flying Tales in the search bar, the show will come up. It's a half-hour show. And so now it's out there in the PBS universe, and hopefully more PBS stations will start to pick it up and carry it. And now we're focused on trying to find sponsors to help fund the production of the entire 12 more episodes that we need to do. And then we'll get that on the PBS network in a more formal fashion to where it will be carried across the country on the PBS stations. That will be a huge help in supporting the Flying Tales mission, because if we get some sponsorships, that revenue will supplant the donations and the fundraisers that we've been doing to keep going. So we'll have a steady revenue stream from sponsorships, and then we can really just kind of focus on the mission. I'd like to expand Flying Tales outside of California. We've done some flights into Oregon and so on, but I like to get basically probably 4 home bases at least, East Coast, Midwest, and the South, and we're here on the West, and have a plane and pilots, or more than one plane, volunteers at those locations who can handle trips around the country, and have all those trips also documented as part of the show. So we're not only doing California wildlife, we're doing, every part of the country has their unique wildlife. You're in the South, now you're talking gators and manatees. I don't know. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that we could be doing. East Coast, we're going to be doing sea turtles and stuff. And in the North could be wolves. Who knows? But there's all kinds of other things going on. Plus, of course, the dogs and cats, and addressing the puppy mill issues and stuff that are really, a lot of that is centered in the Midwest, that needs to be talked about some more, and rescue some animals out of there. So yeah, the goal is to expand this from one TV station in Sacramento to PBS stations across the country, and find sponsorships so that we can get this thing going.
And so it almost had kind of a reality show feel in terms of talking about various missions. And you also had some amazing aerial photography. My first instinct when I saw that was shot by drones, but I don't think that was the case. Tell us about the aerial work.
No, that was a Jet Ranger. We got it out of Buchanan Field, and it was not cheap, but I thought long and hard about it. But my thinking was, well, this is video, because we shot about 3 hours of aerial stuff. And we did a loop from Concord. So we got kind of the Delta scenery in the background that would represent the Central Valley. Then we flew over the wine country. And then we flew over the coast of Marin, down around Bolinas, down Stinson Beach, then over the Golden Gate Bridge and around the bay, got some urban shots. So we got a good mix of the California topography. And so we're using those shots as transition shots in the show open. But those shots can carry an entire season, because we have enough video that we can use different aerial shots of the plane in different episodes throughout the entire series. So I think it's money well spent. And I think it just highlights the beauty of aviation and aviation in California, because, I mean, we have such beautiful country here to, as pilots, we know that, here there's a lot of variety. We have deserts, we have mountains, we have valleys, we have ocean, we have everything. So I love the scenery. And I think that's another selling point. And I'm trying to promote general aviation in addition to saving animals, and showing that these small airplanes are doing big things, and we're flying across a beautiful part of the state. I mean, it all comes together for me. I think it's just a great mix of aviation, animals, and beautiful California topography.
Yeah, there's no question. We have some amazing scenery here. Now, I'm curious, as a pilot from flying these missions, have you learned new things about risk management? Certainly when you've got a cockpit full of dogs or bears, there might be some additional considerations you need to take into mind. And talk a little bit about the kind of the piloting skills that you feel you may have acquired this way.
Well, definitely the bears are not an issue. They're not going to get out of those steel crates. And my wife was concerned about that. It would be impossible. So actually I feel safer with the bears than some of the other animals, but we have not had a problem at all with any of the animals. And usually probably more than 90% of the time they're in a crate. There's been an occasion or two where we get a pop-up request. We were down in Bakersfield and somebody, we're ready to come back, and I get a text, can you stop in Fresno and pick up a dog? Well, we don't have a crate. And it was a little dog. It's like, of course, that dog was going to be put down if I didn't stop. And I'm like, that's not even a decision. Yes, of course, we'll go get the dog. And it's, the dog was about the size of a large Chihuahua. So I set it on the floor, and there was room, and there was a little blanket. That dog did not want to be on the floor, wanted to be in my lap. So it was in my lap the entire flight home. Is that an ideal flying situation? No. Could I be distracted? Yes. What were the odds of something happening? Low. You just kind of weigh your risk as you go a lot of times. We're actually in the process of putting together basically a handbook for pilots that fly for flying tails that outline all of these things. We probably should have leather gloves, like welder's gloves, in each plane, because sometimes you're dealing with a coyote or a fox or something that has very, very sharp teeth, and for some reason it could try to get out of a crate. That's never happened. You have to have these gloves, otherwise you're just going to get really chewed up. Little things like that. Parvo spray after each trip. The plane should be sanitized so that you're not spreading any illnesses to other animals for the next trip. So we're putting that together. And yeah, we are learning as we go. And I'm always talking to the wildlife and the domestic animal people about what we need to know when we're moving animals. We've had dogs that had mange. That can be contagious. We don't want it to spread from one trip to the next trip. So, we're aware of those things. But as a pilot, honestly, almost every time I fly dogs, they just fall asleep. When they get in the back of the plane, you take off. It's 100 degrees in Fresno. You get up to 6,000 feet. It's 70 degrees, 75 degrees. The air vents are open. They just lay down and fall asleep. I think it's the vibration, the smooth vibration and the drone of the engine. And it just puts them to, I've had them sleep when I land. I'm like, my landing wasn't that good, but they're still sleeping. You got to wake them up when you stop the plane. So those are good signs. Never ever had an issue with an animal in the plane. Not one that's tried to get out, not one that's tried to bite me or anything. Like no fights, nothing. They're all really well behaved. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, they're probably happy to know that they're going to a new home or a better place. Well, I would think that certainly in some kinds of airplanes, you'd have to think about how to secure crates so that they don't shift in flight. And
right.
If you've got long days, you've got fatigue kinds of issues. So certainly some things that are a little bit different that people don't have to think about on their typical $100 hamburger run.
Right. That's true. And we haven't figured out yet how we're going to do the 421. There's 5 seats in the back. We're going to take out 4 of them. We'll probably just leave the little toilet seat in the back. And it's kind of an uneven floor because you have the aisle section and then a little raised portion where the seats are attached. So we'll figure it out and we'll make it work. You just do what you got to do to make it work.
So as you scale up the organization, I'm guessing you're looking for more aircraft, more pilots, things like that. What are some of the bottlenecks that kind of keep you awake at night as you're thinking about what you need to do to make this organization grow and be successful?
Well, we're looking at the regulatory side of things so that we're legal with the FAA and the IRS, 2 of my favorite agencies to work with. And we want to make sure we're doing everything by the book. And so we're exploring Part 91 options. So we've looked at Part 135. We're not going to go get our own Part 135. That's just too much. But signing on with another Part 135 operator, we have those opportunities. And right now, since we just got this twin, we're exploring which one's the best fit for us. We're looking at ways to put regular Flying Tails volunteers on a Part 91 operation so that maybe there could be some fuel reimbursements. And we know that's a really sticky subject, very controversial, and the FAA is still kind of toying around with different ideas on that. But we're trying to make sure what we do is, legal and legit and fair to everyone involved. Nobody's making any money off of this thing, that's for sure. And it's we're just trying to support this operation. So again, if we can get the sponsorship revenue, then we can, if we have to buy more planes, we will. I don't think we will, because I think there's enough good people out there that would volunteer their aircraft. When we did the LA fire trip, we had 5 planes with pilots that donated their planes and time and fuel expenses to do that trip. So we're appreciative of that. And I know what it's like to want to do that before I started this. I just had this hunger in me to want to help. And so I was happy to fly my plane and pay for my fuel to go fly these missions. But if you're going to do it regularly, it starts to add up real fast. And so that's something that we're trying to address. So that's what keeps me up at night. How am I going to make this work so that we have good pilots who want to do the right thing, but aren't stiffed or feel like they're taken advantage of? that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to save animals. And, there's some pilots who have the money that they can just keep doing it. But other ones, it's expensive. We all know flying isn't cheap. And we're just trying to do the best we can and stay in budget. And it's tough. It's very tough.
Talk a little bit about the kind of the emotional side of this. Was there any particular mission that really kind of made you really want to do this, or what kind of drives you to do this?
I've been thinking about that, and I didn't know what it was in the first. And now that I've gone through it over the years, I've seen this thing that keeps happening. And then I finally recognized that's what it is that's making me move forward with this, is the animals' behavior when I pick them up and when I drop them off. It's remarkable how it changes. When we pick them up, they're often agitated and scared. They don't know what's going on. And if it's summertime in the Central Valley, it's hotter than hell. They're uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable. I mean, I'm dripping sweat. I have sweat going in my eyes. We're trying to load up a plane. You're on hot pavement outside. Sun is blazing down. People are cranky. Animals are cranky. Nobody's happy. You finally get in the plane, and you can see the stress. You can see the stress in the animals' eyes, the cats and the dogs. You can just see it. And you take off. You get up to altitude. We're coming back home 6,500 feet from Fresno. Air vents are open, and it's starting to cool down. The sweat's starting to dry off a little bit. And you look back, and the animals are starting to settle. This is 10, 15 minutes into the flight. They're starting to settle. Half hour later, some of them are starting to fall asleep. 45 minutes, an hour later, almost all of them are asleep. And then you come into the Bay Area. It's 20 degrees, 25 degrees cooler. You land. You open the door in Petaluma or Napa or San Carlos or San Jose, and the air is sweeter. It's cooler. They know there's someplace different, and their expressions are completely different. You just you can see the happiness in their faces. You can see their eyes, and it just happens over and over again. And I'm struck by that. I'm like, they don't know. They still don't know what's going to happen to them, but they seem to know it's going to be better than what they left behind. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. And seeing the wild animals go back to the wild is the best. I mean, I love going out in Tahoe in the mountains, and I think seeing a wild animal in the wild is a blessing. Seeing a bobcat out on a trail, I love that. Seeing a bald eagle in the wild, it's thrilling. And to know that you are helping keep that happening, we need to have more wild animals in the wild, or at least maintain the ones that we do have. So that's it. It's that connection that you have between people and animals. I don't even know how to explain it. I don't think anybody can really articulate it, but we all agree and we all know what it is, that bond that we have with animals. And to just help animals, I don't know. I think it's payback for the stupid things I've done as a young person, that maybe I'm trying to pay it back, but it makes me feel like I'm earning credit somewhere, by helping these animals. It just makes me feel better. It's kind of a selfish thing too, when you're doing something that makes you feel good and it's actually doing some good for somebody else or for some other animals. That's kind of a double. I mean, it just makes you feel good. It's crazy.
Yeah, totally. For a number of years, I worked with a flying doctors organization. It took volunteer doctors and dentists to Mexico to provide free services in underserved areas. And I know exactly what you're talking about. In some ways, as the pilots, we're getting as much or more benefits, at least psychologically, than the people are, or the animals are receiving the benefits. So yeah, I think people, until they've actually done this kind of helping, they probably don't fully understand what an amazing feeling it is for you as the pilot.
Yeah, I think it's good for your mental health to do something like that, to do good stuff, and then to feel good about. There's a lot you can feel bad about in this world. It's been messed up for a long time, and to go out and at the end of the day actually have a smile on your face. I mean, for something that you've done, it's hard to achieve, I think, nowadays. I mean, even when I was in the news business, it was depressing a lot of. I had to report on stuff that just was ghastly, and it just really emotionally hard to deal with. There were plenty of days and I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good at all. And I didn't do anything wrong. I was just doing my job, but it was awful sometimes. And, the pain and the suffering that's out there. And when you go out there and at the end of the day, you're like, wow, that was great. That was really enjoyable. I mean, you got the flying part. You flew a mission and you accomplished it, right? I mean, that's fun in and of itself. Then you throw another layer on top of it with rescuing an animal. It's just fabulous, right? And you just can't wait to do it again. It never gets old.
Yeah, it really doesn't get much better than that. Well, for folks who have been moved by hearing you talk about what you're doing, especially pilots who might be interested in helping, what are the most useful ways for them to plug into Flying Tales so that they can be part of your story and help out?
Well, our website is flyingtales.org, and we have a sign-up sheet for pilots. And if you don't hear anything back within a week or so, my phone number and my email address, I'll give you my email address. It's ken@flyingtales.org. But I think my phone number is at the bottom of the webpage. I'm going to double check, and call me, email me, hit me on social media, whatever form of communication you want, and we'll get you on. Lou Rivas is our flight director. We both met when we were in the Civil Air Patrol. He was the commander of the squadron in Oakland, and he used to be a compliance officer at a corporation. So he's the guy who is really good at keeping everything in order and the way it's supposed to be and keeping me out of trouble. So he's the guy who will sign you up, and he coordinates the missions, the flights. We call all these flights missions. I like to use the old Navy terminology on, you have a project and you got to get it done. So you want to complete a mission. So each flight where we're rescuing animals is a mission. So Luke handles all of that. We'll get your plane information if you have access to planes or a plane, and, find out where you're based, and we'll get a flight that's appropriate for your location that you can handle. So that's what we'll do.
Ken, I really love what you're doing. You've kind of moved from the dog-eat-dog world of television news to being a first responder for animals. I think that's just a marvelous thing that you're doing. Thanks so much for telling us about all the great work you're doing at flyingtales.org.
Thank you, Max. Thanks for helping spread the word. Really appreciate it.
And remember, please share this episode with all of your friends. And then check out the Flying Tales website at flyingtales.org and send them a note if there's some way in which you'd like to help them. And finally, my thanks to Ken Wayne for joining us here today. And just a reminder that I love hearing from you, and I read many of your emails on the show. If you'd like to send me a message, just go out to aviationnewstalk.com, click on Contact at the top of the page. That's absolutely the best way to send me a message. And of course, I also want to thank everyone who supports the show in one of the following ways. We love it when you join the club and sign up at aviationnewstalk.com/support to support the show financially. You can also do that at aviationnewstalk.com/PayPal. We also love it when you leave a 5-star review on whatever app that you're listening to us on now. And of course, if you're in the market for a headset, please consider buying a Lightspeed headset and using one of the links in our show notes, because if you use those links, they will donate to help support the show. So until next time, fly safely, have fun, and keep the blue side up. And remember that you can always go around.
You can always go around. If it don't look right coming down, don't wait until your side's baby sliding upside down. You can always